Hey, what's going on, everybody? David Noe with Speakeasy HR, presented by Payroll Partners. We are at episode 26. It is March 10th. I love it. The weather is changing. We had daylight savings time. It's going to not be dark at 5:30 p.m., which is awesome. So, cannot wait to get into a topic that's going to be relevant to a lot of people watching. Have an awesome guest with me today. Terry Wilson with Clark Shaefer Strategic HR. Welcome to Speakeasy HR, my friend.
I'm thrilled to be here, David.
Yeah, it's we've had a couple of conversations before today, and as you have been in the world of HR, we were just talking about it for quite some time. You've seen a lot, you've heard a lot, and so I think just these 7 essential skills for leaders and being better leaders, I think will really connect with people. So if you are watching, we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn. So please chime in, ask questions as we go. But if you are new to Speakeasy HR, welcome. Thanks for joining us and spending time out of your Monday with us. We always try to have fun with these topics that are relevant to a lot of people's worlds in HR and business. So I am the editor, host, producer of this awesome show, and I started a website, Speakeasy HR. I've done a blog every week. There's a word of the week. This week is courage. So make sure to go out and check that one. You can subscribe and get every week's blog of the week. So definitely want to make sure you go out there. So we're going to be playing the world famous envelope icebreaker game in a little bit to hear more about Terry and his background and learn about where he has come from in HR. But Terry, if you want to just tell us a little bit about where you're at right now in your position, and people that don't know about strategic HR, Clark Shaefer Strategic HR. What do you want to tell everybody about it?
Well, I work with a firm, Clark Shaefer Strategic HR, which is an outsourced management firm that supports small and medium-sized companies with 4 practice lines. We do HR consulting support. We do interim HR for those locations where you might have a small or medium-sized company where their HR person is out. They just need a person to fill in that seat for a little while. We have interim support. We do talent acquisition, and we do training and development for clients. That's where I spend a lot of my time, working with clients on doing all sorts of training, management training, team training, harassment training, different things that for that client to help them with whatever they need. And we've been around for a long time. This company was started back in 1995, and we've got a very solid base of customers in and around southwestern Ohio, as well as in Kentucky. We've had clients throughout the country.
Yeah.
So it's been a thrill being part of this company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've known about Clark Shaefer and Strategic HR for many years, back to when I first started in HR, which is not as long as you, but getting close to the 20-year mark, which is exciting. So I always like to ask people, and we'll get to the world famous envelope icebreaker game in a minute. But when you when you go back to when you first started working in HR, what got you into that line of work?
I think it was just I stumbled in. Sometimes you get folks that do that. I had planned to spend my career in healthcare.
Okay.
I was planning to work in some profession in healthcare. Didn't know what it was going to be at the time, but somewhere in there, I happened to go to the personnel department. Back then, it was called personnel at the major trauma center hospital where I worked.
Okay.
And talked to some people in HR, and they said, "You really ought to be doing human resources work." And that's that. When I started learning what they did, that was it. From that point on, I actually finished my degree at that point in industrial psychology, which really spent a lot of its time in sort of the research aspect of HR. But then went on to work for a major company, Kimball International. And that's rest is history, as they say. So
Yeah.
it's been a blast.
And you're a Boilermaker, Purdue Boilermaker,
Yes,
right?
I am. Go Boilers.
There you
Yes.
go. So March Madness about to start here.
Yep.
And definitely familiar with the Big Ten growing up in Michigan. So Definitely love the Big Ten conference. So
It's a family thing. My brother
yeah,
went there. My daughter went there. So yeah, we're Boilers true and to heart.
very cool. Very cool. So when you explain to people what you do, what do you tell them?
Um, I, a lot of what it is uh, we figure out what it is that companies need to make them great.
Yeah.
What is it that they can use? What gaps can we fill? And many times it's helping them with what kinds of skills they need to develop. And that's a lot of what we do,
Yeah.
and have for some time. And I think we've developed quite a reputation for doing a really good job of that, not
Yeah.
just in the content, but also the way we train it,
Yeah.
because we really do a lot of experiential training. And when you get into leadership skills, you really need to not just learn something in the classroom; it needs to be practiced.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's what we spend a lot of time with. It's
Yeah.
how do we make sure that this is an experiential thing that you go through in terms of training, and we also spend follow up time with many of our clients doing coaching after they've been through training,
Yeah.
which is very important. So, but
Yeah.
that's it. I mean, a lot of my time is that. I spend the other half of my time actually doing HR consulting
Okay.
for the firm.
Yeah.
I have a client that I spend a lot of time with.
Okay.
Uh, so,
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Like I said, I've been in HR for almost 20 years and I love it. It's just such a variety. I've had different industries, different experiences, different roles. So I think for you, like what has kept you in HR for this long?
I think there's always something different.
Yeah.
There's always a new twist. Things that you thought, hey, I mastered this. I know how to deal with the situation. There's always something else that comes up that's brand new.
Yeah.
And for me, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And helping people to become better themselves has been a great experience for me. Um,
Absolutely.
I've been with many companies that were really well known in their industry and in their communities for being great employers.
Yeah.
And I felt really privileged to be part of those companies.
Yeah.
Uh, and I learned from that. This is what you do to build the right culture, and this is what leaders do to maintain that culture. Because leadership is the keepers of the culture.
Yep.
And so I've learned what leaders do to make that happen.
Yeah.
And from that, in many cases, that's the where I learned the things that I now pass along to other leaders. You
Yeah.
know, um, so it's been exciting. I recommend HR to people who are thinking, what do I want to do with my life? And I've had no regrets. This has been a great profession to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. Julie, thanks for joining us today. She said, I love learning new facts about my colleagues. Thanks for asking these questions. Absolutely. I definitely learn about these guests as I ask the questions, and which leads me to the world famous envelope icebreaker game. Terry, if you are ready, I am ready.
Okay.
So I'll give you a few seconds to think of a number 1 through 15 as I try to play this transition here.
Okay.
All right. So it's nothing fancy. It's just 15 envelopes, 1 through 15. You just pick a
Okay.
number.
All right. Let's go with 9.
Number 9, it is. Let's see. Well, it is a 9. It doesn't really look very close to a 9, but it is the 9. All right. What is your favorite restaurant, cocktail, or movie?
Uh, Favorite restaurant right now? Let's say Texas Roadhouse.
Texas Roadhouse. Man,
Yeah, it
that's
seems to be a real family pleaser these days.
yeah,
And so we spend either takeout or actually going into it. So that's one fun thing. Um, I'm sort of a World War II buff. I got that from my father-in-law, who was a vet, and so sometimes I like to see some really well done movies. For me, Saving Private Ryan was profound in that it showed what good leaders do. I mean, if you look at the main character in there, that it basically you see what that leader does, and the impact that leader has on the people that report to him.
Yeah.
And so, if you look at that and just look at that movie in that respect, it's I think it's a great movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an awesome movie. Texas Roadhouse, I love. It's just it seems sometimes it's so hard to get into. I like to make reservations so I know when I show up I can actually sit down and eat. So awesome.
It's not often you find a restaurant that every time they get it right.
Yeah.
And I think from experience, we've learned that the Texas Roadhouse is really good at that. You
Yeah.
know that you're going to get exactly what you asked for, and it's
Yeah.
going to be great. So yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
There you go. All right, let's do one more. Not 9. Any other number come to mind?
11.
11. Okay. Number 11 it is. What do we got? Okay. If money and time were no object, what would you be doing right now?
I would probably finish my flying lessons.
Flying lessons. Okay.
Yeah, it's something I started long ago and put on hiatus,
Okay.
and haven't started it back up again. But I would do that. I think there's something where it requires discipline. It requires you to definitely have your head in the game,
Yeah.
but at the same time, the view from those windows is awesome.
Yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
just know from the lessons that I had, and as far as I went, it was a thrill. It really
Yeah.
was.
Very
So
cool. Very
yeah,
cool.
it takes time and it takes an investment. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I just haven't had time to get back into. But at some point,
Yeah.
I think I want to get back into that and do that.
Yeah. There you go. That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
So just a few messages from our presenting sponsor, Payroll Partners, and we're going to get into the topic in a minute. But
Did
let
you
me
know that
switch this
1
over
out
real
of 3
quick, and then we'll get
employers
into
make
the
payroll
topic.
errors each year? And that 37% of those mistakes are from manual data entry? This means billions of dollars are lost each year. At Payroll Partners, we eliminate those costly mistakes with award-winning HCM technology that's easy to use. Backed by a team of experts, we make payroll seamless and stress-free. We put people behind your payroll.
All right. So, Terry, when I talk to you about coming on as a guest, just like everybody else, I ask, what topic are you most passionate about talking about right now, and what do you want to bring on to Speakeasy HR? So, essential skills for effective leaders came to mind for you, which I think is
Mhm.
an awesome topic. I think everybody in an organization has either great leaders, okay leaders, some leaders that they want to make great and better, and there's just no perfect formula for that. However, there are essential skills that every leader should have, and that's what you wanted to talk about. So let's
Sure.
dive into that. And obviously, if people have questions watching live, let us hear them. I want to engage with people watching. So first question I have for you, Terry, how can leaders identify and strengthen their weakest leadership skill?
It's a good question. Uh, One of my favorite authors on the topic of leadership and leadership development is John Maxwell. And John Maxwell once said that the good news is there's good news and bad news. The good news is leadership skills can be learned. The bad news is it takes time.
Yeah.
And I think what I've learned from my years, many years of experience, is that learning to be a good leader is something that one has to do and continually learn about how to do. It's like golf. Golf, as anybody who's played the game knows, that doesn't matter how many times you've been out there on the golf course, how many years you played. There's always room for improvement. And being a leader is the same way. Very few people are born to be good leaders. It's all something that you learn from experience and you develop. And John Maxwell said that. I mean, he said that it takes self-discipline and constant work.
Yeah.
And you have to be very intentional about your development. You have to know exactly what thing do I do or not do that I should be doing, and focus on that and try to work to develop that.
Yeah.
And I think that's one way to do that. I think one way to strengthen that skill, one method that works very well is establish a network of trusted resources that you might have that can give you feedback on your own leadership. And that could be peers, it could be fellow managers, leaders, supervisors, it could be a current boss, it could be a former boss, it could be all of those things. But develop a network of people, and then be very specific about what skill that you're working on and ask for their feedback. How do you think I'm doing on this?
Yeah.
And I think I've learned through time that that's where you can really figure things out, because you may think you're doing well in terms of one aspect of leadership. All it takes is for one person to say, let me just tell you what I saw. And that really helps to give you a little bit of a clearer picture of things that you need to develop. So having that network, I think, is important for you to identify if there's any skills that you need to keep honing on to sharpen the saw on that. So
Absolutely. Well, you brought up golf, and it's funny because I played golf growing up. I played in college. My kids are now playing. My 15-year-old was out yesterday playing by himself. I was at a soccer tournament with my other son, and he calls me frantically, and he's like, "Dad, Dad!" And I thought something happened. Like normally he's not calling me when he's playing golf, and he's like, "You never believe it! I just had a hole in one." And I was like, "Oh my
wow.
gosh."
Okay.
So I was like, "Well, did anybody see it?" And he's like, "Yeah, these guys saw it and they took a picture and blah blah blah." So he's 15 and he beat me. I had a hole in one when I was 16. So it was incredible. So I got to they the golf course is near where we live, so I got to stop on like hole 5 and take a picture with him. And I was running around doing other things and couldn't play with him. But yeah, it's just like, I mean, to be 15, I remember when I got mine in high school, and I was
Yeah.
like, I didn't get to see it go in. It was sunny, and the same thing with him. Like it was up a hill, and
Mhm.
he didn't see it bounce, but it bounced behind the pin and came back and went in. So anyway, now it's just it's incredible.
Were his friends up there on the green?
So he was playing by himself. There was guys on the on a hole behind it, so they got to see it.
Okay.
And then when he came up, they were yelling and stuff, and
Yeah.
take his picture and everything. So yeah, it spread pretty quick because when I picked them up, all these guys and they were up by the pro shop, like clapping for him. And anyway, as you started saying something about golf, I wanted to bring that up. So congratulations, Matt. Um, certainly, certainly
It's
his golf coach even emailed everybody today about spring training. And oh, by the way, Matt got a hole in one yesterday.
something he'll never forget his whole
No,
life.
no,
No, that is
and
that's
it
special.
I mean, it may just be one. I told my younger son, I'm like, man, if you can get a hole in one in your life, that's amazing. Like people that get more than one hole in ones in their life are just very rare. But
Yeah, for sure.
you can
Yeah.
play 30,000 rounds of golf and never get never get a hole in one. So anyway,
Yeah, I've never had the experience.
yeah,
So it's I mean, I've played a lot of golf played badly,
yeah.
but
It's
never
one of
had
those things.
never had a hole in one. So
It's one
yeah,
of those things you can always just enjoy when you're out playing with people. And
sure.
so yeah, thanks, Julie. Definitely exciting to be part of. Well, not to be there, but he didn't even get to see it go in. But maybe another one when we're actually playing together. So anyway, uh, so let's get into emotional intelligence,
Sure.
Terry, because
Okay.
I hear this a lot, and I feel like leaders have to have a strong emotional intelligence with their leadership approach.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how can leaders identify, what role emotional intelligence plays in their leadership role, and how can they improve it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because we do training on emotional intelligence because it's so important. In
Yeah.
fact, it's crucial since it really provides the raw materials for the different leadership skills that we also teach. It sort of forms a foundation because it really helps leaders to handle stress. It helps people to be able to deliver good feedback to people. It helps to create a positive work environment. So
Yep.
there's a lot of reasons why it's important. So really, I think to improve, leaders need to understand what makes up emotional intelligence.
Right.
And there's really four parts. There's four elements that a leader has to consider to look at what can that leader do to be able to be much more emotionally intelligent, if you will. The first part is self-awareness. And that's really just understanding how one's own emotions can impact others.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of that. I had a colleague who once told me that whenever I have someone that disagrees with me, I tend to look down, shake my head, and sigh. And my response back when my colleague shared that was, "So how often do I do that?" He said, "All the time." I said, "Does anybody notice?" He said, "Oh yeah, everyone notices, Terry, when you do that." I didn't know it. I didn't know I was doing that. But the impact it had on people was that they were hesitant to say anything that might disagree with me, which is entirely wrong. I mean, because I really want people to tell me if they have a different perspective.
Yeah.
So self-awareness, that first part, me knowing this is what my emotions are and how that I show my emotions and the impact it has on others is very important. The second part is, now that you know what your emotions are and the impact it might have, how do you manage them? So that's knowing how to make those little course corrections when you know that emotions may get in the way. So for me, using that earlier example, now when I learn if someone else is disagreeing with me, I've learned that rather than doing that old behavior, looking down, shaking my head and all that, I know that what I really need to do is defer my judgment, if you will. That is, take my judgment and put it in another place, because what I really need to do is listen. I really need to pay attention and see what's there.
Yeah.
I had a boss that once told me that with anytime you hear someone that disagrees with you and offers you a whole different perspective, somewhere in that other perspective is a golden nugget. There's something there that if you dig hard enough, you might find a great idea. And so you shouldn't take other people's opinions, especially if they disagree with you, and start determining that's not going to work. It's not going to be helpful. You need to listen to what they really say, because somewhere in there is something that could be very useful. So for me, that's how I manage that emotion. I know that I really listen to people when they disagree with me and try to figure out what's behind their opinion. So once you learn how to manage your emotions and you know what they are, there's the third and fourth part, which is now recognizing what they call social awareness, which is other people's emotions, and being able to read those other emotions, and just getting to establish when people have differences, they share their opinions with you, and creating the kind of environment where they can do that. That's very important. And then finally, it's relationship management. So after you have, you know, and you're managing your emotions and you understand others' emotions, it's finding commonalities. It's really building rapport and helping people to be able to work well together. So that's where good leaders can do all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of those things that takes a little bit of work to be able to get there. But it's very important because, like I said before, it really forms the foundation for so much that goes into being a good leader.
Yeah. No, thanks for explaining that, because that, I think, is such an important piece to be an effective leader. I mean, anybody can manage a good team. Anybody can manage people that are self-managed. They get their job done. They come into work. They're motivated. They work well together. It's when you have those people that really do need development and they need motivation and they need somebody as an effective leader to follow and learn from and help them develop as a team member. So when you have to have conversations with people and emotional intelligence plays into it, it's such an important factor. So thanks for sharing. That's incredible. Do you have any real world examples of a leader who really mastered these skills, primarily on emotional intelligence or active listening? You don't have to say like the company, but just one that maybe stands out to you.
I think more recently we had a leadership development class, and we were actually uh, teaching this topic of the 7 essential skills, and this was after we had done some work, and when we do the training, it's you're going to learn it, you're going to practice it, and
Yeah.
to where they feel real comfortable with it. And when we were going through this topic of being able to give good feedback to people, giving positive feedback, constructive feedback, the comment that this person made, and this is a middle manager with a major distribution center operation in the Cincinnati area. He said, I've been a supervisor for 10 years. And he said, I've learned now things that I realized that I should have learned a long time ago.
Hmm.
He said that there's some things here that go into how you manage people and manage them well that, I never really thought about. And he says a lot of it is just understanding how to get to where you're really connected with people and understand them, because that's the key to motivating. It's the key to helping those people feeling fulfilled and engaged. And so that was important to him. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen that recently. I know that in the time that I spent studying this topic, I've even seen very public, well-known figures that have demonstrated good leadership skills. And one of those that sort of stands out in my mind is good old Honest Abe, going back, 2 centuries. Abraham Lincoln was very well known for the way that he communicated. He was well known for deeply listening to people. And you'll see, if you read anything about Lincoln, you'll find out that's one thing that he really did. He really understood how to listen. It didn't matter whether it was someone within his cabinet or whether it was just an ordinary person. He was good at talking to people. And there was a book that was written about Lincoln called the Team of Rivals. And it was about his genius at pulling together his cabinet and the people that worked in his government. Because what he did is he not only valued different perspectives, he brought people in his cabinet that were his former political opponents. He wanted people that were going to give him different perspectives because he was so good at listening and so good at opening up this environment that I'm willing to hear what people have to say, even if they disagree with me. He knew that was the key to getting to new ideas and getting to some innovation.
Yeah.
And so he was a great person as far as a leader. He felt like he called himself at some point that I'm more of a servant to the people that I serve. And that's one of those where the word servant leadership came from, is from his use of that term, being a servant to people. And good leaders, I think, in many respects, have some of those qualities of being a servant leader. That they know I'm there to help my people to be better.
Yeah.
And that's part of the skills that you need to apply to get there.
So you talked about active listening, which I think is huge. And you talked about some of the strategies with that. So I think how does the communication and active listening impact the leadership effectiveness, specifically with a team, and how can somebody improve those skills, would you say?
Yeah, being a good listener is a requirement. You have to be a good listener if you're going to be a good leader.
Yeah.
I mean active listeners. I mean people who know how to process the information that comes into their ears and hits their eardrums. It's people that know how to really understand and seek to understand what's being said and communicated to them, whether it's words or actions or behaviors. They know how to read those things.
Yeah.
So they're really good, well attuned to someone else's, what they're saying, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And it really requires someone whose first reaction is to ask rather than tell.
Mm-hmm.
It's to listen before you make any decisions or before you take that next step.
Yeah.
I had a boss when I worked for is like Kimball International, And he was the one thing about him that really struck me was that whenever I came to him with a problem or an issue, you go to the boss, say, boss, I've got this problem that just happened and I just need your help. Tell me what to do. The first thing he would do was that he wouldn't tell me what to do. Instead, he just asked me a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
And it made me crazy because I kept wondering, why is he not telling me what to do here? And I started wondering why he was doing this to me. Why are you treating me like this? And so it finally dawned on me. In fact, matter of fact, when it dawned on me, it's when we had worked through some sort of issue, and I'd worked through it. And I finally, by talking to him, we figured it out. And he said, this is interesting. He said, who solved this problem today? And I said, oh, boss, I think I did. He said, exactly. And so he knew that the key was getting people involved. And what we found from experience is that listening actively and really helping to understand people and their issues and having them being part of solving those problems themselves is key to making managers more sane. Because we've had so many leaders who come in to tell us that they were put into their job as a supervisor because they knew more about the organization that they work for. They knew more about the processes. They knew about more history. And so they were put in their job as supervisor because they knew all the answers. And so their assumption was, I'm the answer person. You come to me, I'll answer your problem for you. And so what happens, and still happens with so many leaders, they get saddled with so much because they're having people constantly coming to them and expecting them to solve their employees' problems. They don't have time to do anything else. They don't have time to step back and look at processes, say, what can we do better and improve? And how could I better provide things for my employees? They didn't have time for that because they're an answer person. So what we've learned is that if you ask good questions and if you're a good listener and help people solve the problems themselves, it makes your job as a supervisor so much better.
Yeah.
But that's it. So definitely listening is a very important thing for leaders.
Yeah. What about some practical ways for leaders to develop resilience and handle challenges under pressure? Because that happens, whether it happens every week, once a month, once a year, but there will be pressure situations and challenges that they'll have to overcome. So how can someone improve those?
Yeah, I think aside from the things one normally does to relieve stress, which could be things you do to get away from work to resolve that stress, however, for even a short amount of time. I mentioned earlier having a network that you can turn to. I've known over the years it's so important to have someone else there that you can reach out to, and just for one, having a growth mindset. I mean, knowing that in your mind there's always room for being able to improve,
right?
And try to be adaptable and nimble. If you just get over this notion that you have to be perfect, you'll be a lot better, and it's going to help you deal with pressure. Because if you can step away and say, you know what, okay, we didn't do it the way I should. I didn't do it the way I should. I'm just going to do it differently the next time.
Yeah.
And understand that's the way to do it, because everybody's going to make a mistake that you're going to say at the time, this is a career-ending mistake. I can't believe I did this. And maybe I should just change my profession. I mean, you get into things like that before, and then if you just step back, you realize that, you know what, this happens. You just have to learn from it and move on. And I still think having somebody there you can talk to help you through that is really a good thing to do, to have that resource available to you. Because my chances are that person's going to look at it and say, that's not such a big deal, Terry. I don't know why you're so worked up about it. Why don't you just sort of chill a little bit? Take a deep breath. Why don't you go take a walk around the parking lot? That kind of thing. So, but yeah, those are steps I think to help develop that resiliency.
Yeah. Let's pull up these for people watching live. Obviously, if you're listening on demand at a future date, you may not be able to see these, but we're gonna go through these because we already have a little bit. So the 7 essential skills that you promote, Terry. Obviously, some of these we've talked about
Sure.
um, when it comes to conflict and having critical conversations. But if you want to go through some of these listed and kind of point out some that you may not have brought up yet, because
Mhm.
building trust, I tell you what, like a lot of people that don't trust their manager, it's an easy way to say, "Hey, I'm looking for another job." So
Yeah, absolutely. The
yeah,
trust is such you've seen it. It's very easy to break it. And once you break it, it's hard to put it back together again.
yep,
Uh, but it's just a matter of doing those things that build trust. It's
hmm
things like being reliable. If you say you're going to do something, then do it.
yeah,
Or if you can't do it for one reason, tell the person what's going on and why you can't do it, but you're going to be working on it.
yeah,
It's things like being adaptable, understanding that people are different, and each person needs to be handled differently, and
right,
being able to adapt to those different people, and being honest with people.
yeah,
Those are things that you do to build trust and ultimately credibility, because those things are important for you to be able to have influence. As a leader, you're there to influence,
yeah,
to influence people's behavior. And so that's one of those first steps to take. Um, the next step, I think I might have referenced it earlier, is just being able to give constructive feedback to people. That's very important. And that's one of those leadership 101 skills to have, because we find that from our experience very often, that's one of the first things people have to do when they're new supervisors. That's the toughest for them. It's being able to go to someone who's not performing in a way that they are supposed to, or not behaving the way they're supposed to, and they have to tell them that and tell them how they have to change. It's amazing how many new supervisors avoid doing that altogether
hmm
because it's kind of tough to do. Well, that's one of those things. If you learn how to give feedback to someone where they walk away from the experience having learned from it and feeling better,
yep,
then you're well on the way to becoming a good leader, being able to do that. Uh, the next thing that we have, which is that third step, is engaging and motivating. And we know from experience, a lot of that is around it's helping people to solve problems themselves.
hmm
It's helping them to feel like they are an active part of making their own workplace better and being part of this team that they're on.
yeah,
And so there's a lot around recognition, how to recognize people's behavior, how to be involved with them being an active part of their own work, and really motivating people in that respect is important. So
yeah,
good leaders, do that very well. And that sort of leads to the fourth one. If you get people that become more actively involved, start having them find ways to make their processes better,
yeah,
where they're an active part of making changes. And some of those changes through time can be dramatic changes that are improvements to not only their work, where they've been able to simplify their own jobs, but simplifying the whole team that they're on, or making the workplace better.
yeah,
When they see that and they experience it, employees feel like, hey, I'm part of something exciting, and I play an active part in this. That's a really great thing as a leader if you can get people going in that direction. The fifth skill is really, when you have learned some of these other things, it's how are you able to handle those tough conversations, the ones that really you have to think through and handle it, sometimes delicately, but sometimes it's conflict.
right,
But good leaders recognize that disagreement is not bad. As a matter of fact, disagreement can be very good and is part of an effective team. when people learn how to disagree with each other and walk away with having and learning something and getting maybe a better process or a great solution out of it, that's a great thing. And that's what research has shown, that what effective teams do. They know how to disagree with each other, and they
Yeah.
don't shy away from it. They don't fear it.
Yeah.
And having a leader being able to navigate that makes them a really good leader. And then finally, just developing employees, finding a way to continually learn what that employee needs, what they want, and mapping out plans for them to continue to develop themselves, to become better and whatever they want to do in life.
Yeah.
And then the final step is just helping employees to manage change and recognizing as a leader that you also need to be able to manage change. Through all the years I worked, and I think everybody can attest to this one, life has a funny way of constantly changing the lineup for you. And so you have to just recognize that's just life.
Yeah.
And you have to become open and able to change and become resilient.
Yeah.
Because that's what one does. And for leaders, they have to know, how do I steer this group of people that I serve to help them get through changes.
Right.
So those are skills, and we found through experience that if you can do these things, all these things, or keep working at them, like we talked about earlier, looking at this and saying, what of these different set of skills can I improve? You'll be a better leader, and people recognize you for that.
Yeah, I think a lot of managers can have these skills. It's if you can do all of these, you're not only a manager, but you're a leader, because a lot of people, like you said, they go into a position and they're not in a managerial role, and they might get promoted, and now they're managing people that they once were coworkers of.
Sure.
So that first one of credibility and influence and trust, that's a whole different dynamic versus somebody coming in that you don't know, you've never worked with. So those dynamics are so different. And then you've got the work environments that you probably see, hybrid, remote, in office.
Mm-hmm.
So managing change and developing employees can look so different amongst industries, in companies size, in the makeup of the company, because it's not all the same. Like after the pandemic, there's still companies that are remote, and
Mm-hmm.
how do you influence a coworker or a team lead, or a part of your team, when you never really see them in person? It's
Sure.
so different versus having a face-to-face conversation.
It has required a different twist on those skill sets, right?
Yeah.
I agree with you on that one, David.
Yeah.
It's and we learned that as everybody did who experienced the lockdowns. It's, how do I now manage people when I can't look over the wall of my cube to see what they're doing.
Right.
I can't head out to go get a cup of coffee and stop by and see someone. It's different. But a lot of leaders have become very good at being hybrid or remote leaders.
Yeah.
Because they found out I got to do the same stuff. I just have to do it a little bit differently to do that, to get those things done.
Yeah.
But that's why you see some. It's funny because there's been the pendulum swing has been going towards get everybody back, get everyone back to the office. There's a lot of leaders that have found out, what? No, I'm not so sure I'm going to do that, because actually we're doing very well with it the way it is, with people working remotely, because they figured it out. And I know it sometimes depends on the industry, depends on your customer base.
Right.
But for some people, they do just fine by doing it remotely, because the leadership team has learned how to do it well. So
So if leaders should focus on mastering one of these skills, which one would you recommend and why?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think that having people to learn how to give good feedback is important. It's because it's one of those, if you could get that done, it's a great first step to start building on.
Yeah.
Because if it's sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes people don't share feedback with the people that now report to them. I found that some people don't even share positive feedback very often, which you would
Yeah.
think, how hard can that be to tell someone you did an awesome job there? But sometimes they fear that they're going to seem inauthentic, or
Right.
that it's going to sound like it's just sort of standard stuff, and it's going to end up having a negative impact when it's received. And so they don't even do it. They don't give people positive feedback, or worse yet, they assume this person's doing great. Why would I give them positive feedback? It's just like the people who are doing great probably like to hear positive feedback. And so it's funny how you do that. If you get people understand that actually talking to people and making sure that you stay connected with what is going through their heads and helping to ensure that they have clear expectations and that they're getting what they need to be able to do their job well.
Yeah.
And then you give them feedback if they need to make a course correction. All
Yeah.
those things are so important and so fundamental that it's the kind of thing that should be happening every day with your employees, or at least every week.
Right.
So I think that's it, because when you get to that point, then you can start figuring out, how do I resolve conflicts, or how do I start ramping up engagement, or how do I get people more empowered? So, because you can do those things a little better if you know at least how to have good, solid, constructive conversations with people.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go back, episode 6 with your colleague, Kathleen Snyder, she talked about employee engagement.
Mhm.
Don't forget the basics. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I highly suggest jumping back in on demand, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube. Find episode 6 with Kathleen, because that was another great episode about employee engagement. So this has been great, Terry. I really appreciate your time. Anything else you'd like to add before we jump off here? And
No, I would just say, I'd say if there's a routine that you can develop
yeah,
as a leader, is maybe do something that's sort of a daily debrief.
yep,
Find some time in your day to do a kind of a debrief of your own behavior, your own work, and ask yourself, well, what did I do today or yesterday that is making me more effective?
yeah,
Um, and then what did I do yesterday that might have made me or my employees less effective, less productive?
yeah,
Um, and so then finally, what can I do to make sure that I'm doing the right things? Or what do I need to change? I'd say if you can at least do that, spend 5 minutes to step back and think, what did I do today as a leader that I think either I need to keep doing or need to do differently? And if you can do that, I think it's sort of interesting. And like I mentioned earlier, if you've got others you can tap into to say, what do you think? What do you think about how I'm doing as a leader?
yep,
I think that's a great way for you to continue down this road of really being an exceptional
yeah,
manager.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And if anybody's interested in hearing more about Terry and his team at Strategic, you can look them up, scan the QR code on the screen, or go to strategichrinc.com, part of the Clark Shaefer Hackett group. Clark Shaefer Strategic HR now, as the company. So definitely enjoyed our conversation, Terry. I think you have a wealth of knowledge, and if everyone follows what Terry just said, they will be much better effective leaders in the future, and hopefully will help them in their career, in their organization, with their teams. So really enjoyed it. Definitely enjoy this weather. I hope Purdue and the Big Ten teams go far in the conference. Big
Yeah,
Ten
baby. That's
uh,
right. Now
March
we're
Madness.
talking.
It's going to be exciting. Hopefully somebody in the Big Ten can compete with the others out there. But this has been great. Andrea, thanks for joining. Yes, love this. Thank you, David and Terry, for sharing this conversation. So, yeah, I really appreciate your time, Terry. I know you're busy, but appreciate your time to carve out and come on to Speakeasy HR and share your knowledge. So, certainly enjoyed it.
No, I certainly appreciate the invitation, David. This was a hoot. I
Yeah.
appreciate you doing this, and
Very
I
good.
appreciate being part of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Every guest that comes on is different perspectives, and I've got a ton of great guests coming up until December. I'm booked out, so can't believe
Nice.
it. We're talking 2026 now for Speakeasy HR, so
That's
exciting,
great.
exciting
That's
time.
great,
So
David. That's wonderful.
yeah, so anyways, well, I'm off next week, so the next episode will be in 2 weeks, but I have an awesome guest coming up in 2 weeks. So Terry, thanks again, and have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon, my friend.
All right. See you later, David.
All right, take care.
Okay.